Hello and welcome to another Magic Duels Origins gameplay. Today we're taking a look at a blue-green or Simic Tempo deck. So the idea is to deploy a few threats and then keep using bounce spells like Disperse, for example, to return the opponent's creatures to their hand, and then keep attacking with our creatures and win before the opponent gets to deploy his hand. So we've got a lot of creatures with sweet abilities when they connect with the opponent, and we've got a lot of ways to get our creatures through and to bounce the opponent's creatures. So let's get started here with our only one drop, a single Might of the Masses. I just wanted a very cheap combat trick, and Might of the Masses I think is the best one. Only 1 mana, so cheaper than a Titanic Growth, and we have a few creatures in this deck that make multiple creatures, making Might of the Masses pretty good. Then we have Harbinger of the Tides, a very powerful 2-drop, double blue for a 2/2, and when he enters the battlefield we get to return a tapped creature to the opponent's hand, and if we pay 2 colorless we can play him at instant speed, so this can bounce an attacking creature if you play it at instant speed, so a very versatile card and a very tempo oriented card, which is nice in this deck. We're also playing the full amount of Welkin Tern as a very cheap evasive threat, so a 2/1 with flying and can only block creatures with flying, but that doesn't really matter since we're attacking with Welkin Tern anyways. So makes for a nice consistent source of damage, while we can bounce the opponent's creatures and play our ground creatures as well. We also have Undercity Troll, which you might remember from the Renown video. 2/2, and when he connects with the opponent he gets a +1/+1 counter and becomes Renowned. And for 2 and a green we can also regenerate him, so can even attack into blockers if we really have to. Then we have 2 copies of Disperse, an instant speed for 2 mana, very versatile way to bounce permanents, so can bounce planeswalkers, enchantments, you name it, and can be used on the opponent's turn of course. Then we also have a Jhessian Thief, a prowess creature, so when we play a non-creature spell she gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and when she connects with the opponent she gets to draw a card, which is obviously very nice, and is one of the ways you can get ahead of the opponent. We have 2 copies of Frost Lynx as another tempo play, can tap down a creature and keep it tapped down for a turn, so also puts a body into play which can start attacking, and if we keep playing these types of effects, our creatures like Frost Lynx can also get in for some damage, which is the whole point. Then we also have a Valeron Wardens as another Renown creature, and she's just fine as a 1/3 that can become a 3/5 when she connects with the opponent, and she also draws us a card whenever a creature becomes Renowned. So very powerful again if she connects with the opponent, so that's why all those bounce effects are in the deck. And also combos with our other Renowned creatures, which we do have a couple of. We've got the Undercity Troll and then another guy which we'll get to in a second. Then we have Bounding Krasis, which is the multicolor card in this deck and is obviously very good. 3/3 with flash, so we can play it on the opponent's turn also. And when he enters a battlefield we can tap or untap target creature, so very versatile again. We can untap our blockers, we can tap down an attacker before attackers are declared, we can tap down a blocker and make a surprise 3/3, so very versatile, very powerful and very efficient, so perfect for this kind of deck. Then we have 2 copies of Wildsize, which synergize very nicely with our Renown creatures and with our Jhessian Thief for example. But I don't want to have too many copies because it is a 3 mana card and we already have a lot of 3 mana spells. Speaking of which, we also have Anchor to the Aether, which is a sort of a bounce spell for creatures but also puts it on top of the opponent's library, so they have to redraw the same card and we get to scry 1. So this sort of acts like a removal spell. It is a sorcery, which is the downside of course, so we can't use this on the opponent's turn, but it's still a fine tempo play which should allow our creatures to connect with the opponent. Then we have a Whirler Rogue, which is actually very nice in this deck because not only does she make the 2 Thopter tokens which can start attacking, but her ability is very relevant in this deck. We can tap the 2 Thopters she just made and then target creature can't be blocked this turn. And of course everyone knows Whirler Rogue is a very good card. Then we also have the full amount of Separatist Voidmage, which is a 2/2 that bounces a creature when he enters the battlefield. So another strong tempo play, makes the opponent spend their mana to recast that same creature while we keep attacking with our other threats. And then finally we also have 2 copies of Outland Colossus, which also has Renown, a 6/6 that can only be blocked by 1 creature. So very powerful and very good with all our bound spells and with Wildsize in particular. And then for our mana base we're running 10 islands, 7 forests, 2 Hinterland Harbor, and the full 4 Simic Guildgate. Alright, let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, let's take a look at our opening hand, which looks pretty good. We've got an early play, the Krasis, bound spell, and the Colossus down the line, and perfect mana, so we'll keep. Lead with our Guildgate, pass the turn, and see what we're up against. Also interesting to note is that our deck is pretty resilient to cards like Twin Bolt. Our only target is really Welkin Tern. Most of our other creatures have pretty high toughness. So let's lead with Welkin Tern and hope our opponent in this case doesn't have the early Twin Bolt or Fiery Impulse. Doesn't. Alright, there's the Fiery Impulse. So at least our Bounding Krasis might survive a future Fiery Impulse. So 1 instant or sorcery in the graveyard. There's Majoring Bully. So 2/2 prowess has to attack every turn if able. So I'm not sure what we're gonna do about that. So we can play the Bounding Krasis as a surprise blocker. Then if our opponent does have an instant, the trade, which isn't great for us. So we could also just tap this down before it gets to attack. So I think that's what I'm gonna do here. So we're gonna have to be quick on the trigger here. Play the Krasis. And tap this one down. And I feel a lot more comfortable trying to block in the future when we can keep up a pump spell, for example. But looks like we're gonna be able to play the Colossus at some point, which is gonna block this quite easily. And the opponent also stuck on 2 mana. So I think I'll just attack here and then anchor to the Aether the Bully, since our opponent's stuck on land, and this will prevent our opponent from drawing another land for a turn. That works. Now bounce it. Scry 1, we don't want more land. I'll take another anchor though, as that's gonna stop our opponent from drawing another land. And once the Outland Colossus hits the table, it should be pretty easy to win. And Wildsize is a nice combo with it. So now we get to attack. Alright, our opponent did somehow have a land, so maybe they just forgot to play their land last turn. Interesting. I'm gonna attack and then play Outland Colossus. And then I'm gonna block the Majoring Bully, should it attack. I guess our opponent could go Mountain, 2 burn spells to finish this off. But that doesn't seem very likely. It's interesting the sort of mind games that this type of effect can bring to the table. But I'm gonna block. And let's find out if our opponent has 2 burn spells, which would still be a 3/1, which is fine for us. But if this does work, then I think we just win. Alright, there's the first burn spell pointed at our face, and the second Twin Bolt is going to be pointed at the Colossus. Alright, fair enough. So we pick up a 3/1, And we still have a 3/3 in play, plus another one. So I'm not too worried about that exchange. Attack for 3, and play the Bounding Krasis on the opponent's end step, tapping down whatever creature they played. So there's an Abbot, which exiles an Anchor. So our opponent's also on a very aggressive deck here. And a Dragon Fodder to make 2 blockers, which is pretty good here for our opponent. I'm gonna play the Krasis, and I think the Abbot might as well tap down a token, I guess, since we don't mind our opponent double blocking, and we don't mind our opponent blocking with the Abbot. I would rather have the opponent lose the Abbot than lose a token here. So I think we attack first and then play the Frost Lynx if our opponent doesn't block. If he blocks with the Goblin, let's see, do we Wildsize or not? I don't think we do. So the double block is what we want to see here. So now we get to Wildsize. And Disperse is also nice. Our opponent decided he had enough. We can keep up Disperse to bounce whatever blocker our opponent plays. And if he doesn't have blockers, alright, Jhessian Thief is fine. Play Disperse on the Thief. Guess we could have used Disperse on the token since that would kill the token, but now we also have a Frost Lynx to tap down the Goblin, plus we drew Might of the Masses. Anchor to the Aether is also a possibility on tokens, but I would rather have my opponent draw the same card again. So even a Fiery Impulse here would not save our opponent, all according to plan. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Alright, let's take a look at our opening hand. So 2 lands, a bunch of 3-drops, a bunch of 4-drops and a 5-drop. I don't think I want to keep this one. And this hand's more acceptable. We have some early plays and a Wildsize, so I'll keep. Lead with the Guildgate. Our opponent mulliganed once but also kept 7. And leads with Rakdos Guildgate. So I don't expect this Welkin Tern to survive for long. Play Welkin Tern and pass. Hope to draw another blue source for Whirler Rogue at some point and for the Harbinger. We're playing more islands than forests. Dragon Fodder, alright. So we might have to use this if we don't draw the blue source. Anchor, that's interesting. So we could just use a Wildsize here to draw a card and get in for 2 more damage. I guess we could also use the Scry one from Anchor, but using Anchor on a token doesn't sound great. And looking at our threats, would be nice to have this Wildsize for the Outland Colossus, but we also have Whirler Rogue that can make the Colossus unblockable. So I think I'm okay with using Wildsize here to draw a card. And that's perfect, so next turn we'll have the Whirler Rogue attack for 4. And pause a turn. So our opponent could also be playing the red-black sacrifice deck with Nantuko Husks and Act of Treason effects, but leads with a Read the Bones here, so we're not sure what type of deck our opponent's on yet. Could just be some sort of red-black control deck. So I think I'm just fine running out a Whirler Rogue here. Our opponent could have a sweeper on 4, like Languish. Does Jhessian Thief change anything? Our opponent could also have cheap removal for this, like Reef Soul. Did not use it on the Welkin Tern. And if our opponent is on a control deck, I would expect they use the Reef Soul on turn 2 instead of Dragon Fodder, but maybe our opponent found something like Reef Soul with Read the Bones, so this is interesting. Let's start by attacking. And I think I'm just gonna go for the more mana efficient play of a Whirler Rogue here. And we'll see next turn what we want to play. So a Sweeper would be bad here. Twin Bolt would be mildly annoying, killing a token and the Welkin Tern. Perilous Mirror we don't really care about, unless our opponent can sacrifice it somehow. And no attacks would be great. And no attacks, and there's a Twin Bolt. Alright, and it's gonna take down those two cards. Alright, we drew a Forest, so here, let's see, we could attack with both. Our opponent can double block and then shoot down the Thopter. We can play the Colossus this turn for sure. So the question is, do we attack with the Rogue or not? I think I'm fine attacking with the Rogue, since that might clear a path for the Colossus. We could lose a Thopter token here, but I think that's fine. Opponent does not block, interesting. So we'll just play out the Colossus. And we haven't found a window yet for the Harbinger, as our opponent has been on the defensive so far. 5th land, HELLHOUND, alright. So this can sacrifice Perilous Mirror and kill both of these essentially. Undercity Troll, so let's see. I think I'm gonna start this turn by anchoring this HELLHOUND to the Aether, and then our opponent's gonna have to decide how he wants to sacrifice his creatures, and then we can decide what to do after. So I'm expecting these two to die. So Thopter down and Whirler Rogue down. Fortunately we don't have any pump spells to save them. And Valeron Wardens. We are gonna play the Troll here, but I don't think we need the Valeron Wardens. I would rather find a pump spell or another bound spell. Attack for 6. Jump and play the Troll. So our opponent could replay the HELLHOUND. Then the question is, can we still attack with our Colossus? We probably can. So even if your opponent blocks and sacrifices this, the Colossus still survives. Our opponent can't double block the Colossus. Alright, this changes things. So your opponent can sacrifice the Arsonist and block the Colossus with the HELLHOUND. But I think... Let's see. If our opponent does indeed block and sacrifice the Arsonist, our Outland Colossus is dead, these two die. So we might as well also attack with the Undercity Troll, so in case our opponent decides to block here, we can just regenerate it and play another Troll, which is also fine. And if our opponent does make this block and sacrifice, then if he doesn't want to chump, we get in for 2 and get this Renowned. Alright, so our opponent goes for the chump here and try and kill this there. which is also fine. So now we regenerate and play the troll. Our opponent might be considering a card like Wildsize here, which could do some damage if we have it. Alright, this is interesting. Not sure what this accomplishes. So we'll regenerate here. I guess our opponent can sacrifice this. So our opponent sacrifices the Arsonist, deals 1 damage with the Hellhound, deals 1 damage with the Arsonist, but then our Undercity Troll is going to be removed from combat, if I'm not mistaken. So this block doesn't happen, so we don't lose the Undercity Troll, so that didn't really make a difference. Only now our opponent lost the Arsonist instead of the Goblin token. So does our opponent have a removal spell for the Colossus? It doesn't look like it. So no attacks. Alright, so now their opponent has 2 Hellhounds, he can sacrifice one of them. So he can block and then sacrifice 2 creatures to kill the Colossus. But I think that's fine. Just gonna attack with, I think, only 1 troll in case our opponent blocks both trolls with the Hellhound. Because I can only regenerate 1 of them. So let's attack like this. So that's an obvious block. And then I think our opponent's gonna try and kill the Colossus. Nope, just a chump. So let's make sure to regenerate this one. And then the question is, do we want to play the Harbinger here? I think we do. Just to put more creatures out there. Not gonna bounce anything. Pass the turn. It's also only opponent's creatures, so we can't bounce our own creatures with this. So our best draw here is probably some sort of pump spell or bounce spell. So our opponent is clearly the steal and sacrifice deck, but hasn't found any Act of Treasons yet. So we do need to keep that in mind, because our Outland Colossus could do some damage to us as well. Alright, there's a Disperse, so let's see. What happens if we attack with the Colossus? Our opponent could block with the Husk and sacrifice 2 creatures, but that doesn't seem very likely. Could just chump with Husk and then ping us for 1. Or he could block with the Hellhound and then sacrifice 2 creatures to try and kill it. So either way I think we're attacking with the Colossus. Then does the Undercity Troll come in? I think it does, since we still get to regenerate it and then just play Thief or use Disperse. But I don't think we attack with the Harbinger. Alright, so it's gonna be the chump and ping us for 1, I think. While our opponent tries to draw one of those steal effects. Alright, pings us for 1. And I don't think we Disperse here. We could leave Disperse up in case our opponent does find one of those steal effects, so we can bounce our own Colossus. But I would rather put this Jhessian Thief in play, I think. It's actually a pretty close decision. Our opponent also gets to activate the Foundry of the Consuls next turn. Alright, just a land. So our opponent has 2 more chump blockers for the Colossus. But now I think we move in on Frost Lynx, tap down a HELLHOUND, and then let's see, do we attack with everyone? Do we bounce the HELLHOUND first? I think we do disperse it now, because otherwise our opponent could block a card like Jhessian Thief. So now the tokens are gonna block the Thief and the Colossus, but we still get in for 4 and get Troll Renowned. Alright, decides to block the Troll instead, and then can shoot down the Harbinger. Alright, that works. Draw with Jhessian Thief, it's a land. No reason to play it. So let's pause a turn. Opponent has a HELLHOUND in hand and drew another land, so floods out a little bit here, and did not find any steal effects, which is one of the reasons the sacrifice and steal deck is a little inconsistent. If you only draw your sacrifice outlets and not the steal effects, it can be pretty weak. And here I think we just attack with everyone. Opponent blocks and pings again. Sweet, Bounding Krasis, so we get to play the Thief. And then use the Bounding Krasis on the opponent's turn. Another land. And end of turn, tap down the HELLHOUND, and now our Colossus will finally become renowned after a long struggle. Alright. Attack and move on to the next one. Alright, let's take a look at our opener. So we've got a turn to Welkin Tern, then follow it up with a Wardens and Voidmage to clear a path. So I think this hand's keepable. Hope we don't draw many more lands, since 4 is already a lot for this deck. Alright, Harbinger is nice. So next turn, run out Welkin Tern. And then we might want to use Harbinger at some point as well. Another red-black deck. And no turn to play. So this Welkin Tern is probably gonna die. But so be it. End of turn Twin Bolt. Nope. Alright. Might be a Reef Soul then. Alright, Gearcrafter is a nice answer to Welkin Tern, unfortunately. So gets to block Welkin Tern with our token, so I don't think we attack with Welkin Tern just yet. Instead we get to play Valeron Wardens, and next turn we'll have to decide what creature to bounce. We could have tried to offer a trade here, so next turn Voidmage bounces the Gearcrafter and we get in with the Wardens, but that's not gonna work if our opponent has another blocker, and that's also not gonna work if our opponent kills the Wardens. So this probably means our opponent has a burn spell of some kind, so I'm not gonna trade. So our opponent must have a Fiery Impulse or Twin Bolt in hand. Could also be a Titan Strength, I guess. So yeah, I think we just Voidmage the token here. Don't really want to bounce the Gearcrafter, as that will give our opponent a token when he replays it. And are we gonna see some removal spells now? Maybe when we attack. If he has 2 burn spells, he could kill both, which would hurt. It looks like 1 to us and 1 to the Welkin Tern, so Wardens does connect. And we get to draw a card. Sweet, alright. So if he attacks, I think I'm okay trading. Our opponent could have something like Flashback in his hand, which I guess is a reason to not block the Gearcrafter if it attacks. And this is also a reason not to block. But no attacks. So here, I think I'm fine trading the Wardens with the Gearcrafter plus a burn spell, and I'm fine trading here when we're attacking, since we're gonna follow up with 2 creatures. So flashback is not a concern. I guess Languish should be a concern, since our opponent looks to be pretty controlling with this shadows. Our opponent does trade. And I think we do run out 2 creatures here, probably just Troll plus Welkin Tern. And then hope we don't get hit by a Languish plus a burn spell on the Wardens. Pause the turn and hope for the best. Sixth land. Flesh to Dust, alright, takes down the Wardens. And Shadows of the Past gives our opponent some scries. So next turn we're attacking for 4, this gets renowned. And we have to decide if we wanna play out the Welkin Tern or not. Let's start by attacking. Get this renowned, and I think we just play out the Welkin Tern, leave up regeneration for the Troll, which is not gonna help against a card like Languish, also not gonna help against a card like Flesh to Dust, but could help against some other cards, I guess. And then keep this up at instant speed, and keep this for a potential blocker, so we don't run with all our creatures into a Languish. Child of Night is not a problem, and our opponent only has 1 card left. So we could play the Harbinger here just to make a 2/2, then next turn play the Voidmage, hit our opponent for 7, 8, 9, down to 3. Yeah, I think I like that. So now we get to Voidmage. Guess we'll play the land for regeneration. Bounce the child. And attack for 9. And their opponent doesn't have enough creatures in the graveyard to activate this yet. So that's not a concern, and the lifelink should not matter unless our opponent finds a sweeper of some kind, like Chandra's Ignition, which would be pretty bad here. I guess we would still keep the Undercity Troll. So now we just attack with our flyers, which would deal 4, and Disperse is gonna make it even easier. So we can just bounce this and attack with everyone. Otherwise, I think we could also just attack with everyone, even if he does have a removal spell, killing, for example, the 2 Welkin Terns. He still has to block here, takes 5, then gains 2, so still dead. And otherwise he's jumping up to 5 and then down to 1, which is still fine. So there is a Fiery Impulse taking down a Welkin Tern, but that would not have been enough, even without the Disperse. Alright. I wanna thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this gameplay, and as always, have a nice day.